Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. 3 months after the elections, Iraq is still without a government. Tough political horse trading is underway, and party bosses are jockeying to win the coveted position of prime minister. All parties have wrapped themselves up in Iraqi nationalism and vowed to make services, security, and fighting corruption their top priorities. Polls indicate Iraqis don't believe a word of it. What everyone is reluctant to discuss openly and freely, however, is who is the favorite candidate for Iraq's neighboring countries? Despite denial and protestation by Iraqi politicians, the decision as who should govern Iraq is made as much as in Tehran, Damascus and Washington as by Iraqi voters.
Iraq's politicians are far from striking a deal that needs to be made in the corridors of parliament before it enters the main chambers. For the first time since an inconclusive parliamentary poll, recently elected parliamentarians convened, but the meeting was nothing more than a symbolic session. Parliamentarians were expected to select a new speaker and president before a political bloc is tasked with forming a government. That didn't happen.
After the consultations we carried out today, we found that there is a need for further consultations among the political parties and its members. Therefore, the session will remain open and will convene at a later date.
Iraq's political impasse boils down to a two-man power struggle, an impasse the constitution does not make a provision to resolve. Both caretaker Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki and the head of the Iraqi list, Iyad Allawi, want the post of Prime Minister. Their competition over power makes the option of a unity government unlikely. Allawi had a 2-seat win over Maliki's bloc, but that doesn't guarantee he will get the first chance at forming the next government. The National Alliance now has the largest number of seats in parliament after a post-election deal between the mainly Shia political parties. What is open to question is whether the largest bloc is the one decided by the vote or the one created after the poll. It's an issue that kept prolonging the political vacuum and fed fears that if a mainly Shia alliance sidelines Allawi's Sunni-backed bloc, it could destabilize the security situation even further. It is a dangerous time for political uncertainty. By the end of August, U.S. combat troops are set to leave the country, a country which is far from stable and far from secure. Iraqis hoped their leaders would be able to set aside their differences for the sake of political reconciliation. But in the reality of Iraq's new democracy, politicians may have to reach a broad political agreement before they finalize it in parliament. Zaina Khudr, Al Jazeera.
To discuss the obstacles and chances of forming the next Iraqi government, I am joined from Baghdad by Sharif Ali ibn al-Hussein, a leading figure of the newly formed National Alliance, and by Mustafa al-Hiti, a leading figure of an Iraqi coalition headed by Iyad Allawi. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Now that the federal court has sanctioned the results of the March election, the real political horse trading has just started, and most likely it is going to continue for some months to come. Sharif Ali ibn al-Hussein, what does al-Iraqiyya want actually from Iyad Allawi?
Well, I think first of all, we have to all agree that the Constitution states that the largest parliamentary bloc has the right to present a candidate for the prime ministership. It doesn't say that the largest list, electoral list has the right. It says the largest parliamentary bloc, and that is the National Alliance. So first we need them to accept that, and then we can move on to the second stage, which is deciding on which candidate is the most likely to achieve a majority in Parliament. A great deal of the discussion revolves around which party has the right to form the government. That isn't what really is under discussion. What is under discussion should be who is most capable to or able to get a majority in Parliament. And from what we see is that at the moment, the two leading candidates, the two frontrunners, are having a great deal of difficulty. That's Dr. Iyad and Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki.
Until that difficulty is resolved, let me seek the judgment and the wisdom of Mustafa al-Hiti, who is a leading figure of al-Iraqiyya headed by Iyad Allawi. Have you in the Iraqiyya conceded the first point, and that is the largest bloc entering the parliament is going to form the government, or the largest winner in the election?
Well, I think both of them from the constitutional, they call it the constitutional court. It is not a constitutional one. It is the federal one, which was formed at least maybe 1 year before we have the constitution. So this court say it is for both, it is okay. But if we go back for the election law, and we defined it, and we found that any coalition should be formed before the day of election. And they closed all, what we call it, the coalition a long time before the 7th of March. So anything related to this matter, I think when they said, well, it could be before and after, we don't accept it.
Judging by what you said and what Sharif Ali ibn al-Hussein said, it seems to me, as well as the observers of the Iraqi situation, this period between the first session of parliament until the next Iraqi government is sworn in, it is going to take for perhaps months, and some people say perhaps even next year. So Sharif Ali ibn al-Hussein, let me ask the question in a different manner. What will it take for al-Maliki, for instance, who is currently perhaps is your candidate in the Iraqi National Alliance, to get the consent of al-Iraqiyya? Is there some sweetener? Is there something you can give him? Because Ayad Allawi is adamant that is his right. He should be called upon when the Iraqi president is elected, and most likely is going to be Jalal Talbani, that he should be called upon to form the new government.
Well, of course, the National Alliance hasn't agreed yet on a candidate, but we would expect that to happen within the next few weeks. I think what we
That's
need
what you
from
said a few weeks ago,
Iraqi,
and that did not happen. It looks like it's quite possible that even this alliance between al-Maliki and al-Hakim is going to fracture, and perhaps they will find, I don't know, a compromise candidate.
I mean, the compromise candidate is always hanging in the wings, depending on whether you consider that to be an alternative to Dr. Ayad or Dr. al-Maliki, Mr. al-Maliki. But going back to your first point, I think what we need is from an Iraqi is to deal with political realities. The political reality is the National Alliance is now the largest constitutional bloc. The political reality is that we are very close to the Kurdish bloc in parliament, and that it is very likely that we will reach agreement on the government program over the next 4 years. At that point, al-Iraqiyya has to make a serious decision. Will they accept working with us to agree on a candidate which is put forward by the National Alliance or not? It is all well and fine over the last 3 months that they have been taking this negotiating position and insisting on Dr. Ayad becoming a prime minister, being prime minister. But the political realities are that it is very unlikely that he will be able to form a majority in parliament.
Point very clear. Let me run it by Mustafa al-Hiti.
Will put forward a candidate.
He used the word real. Get real, Mustafa al-Hiti. Your man is not going to make it. That's what he's saying.
I think the other way is right. I mean, the coalition between the state of law and the Itilaf Watani is not going to work at all, because we just have started 2 days ago a negotiation between the state of law. If they have really being together, then the meeting should really be with the people as well from Itilaf Watani. But we had met only with the state of law till now. And we have really noticed in the news that they didn't reach a solid agreement. It is just a fragile one.
There is a veto on al-Maliki, and that veto is by none other than Muqtada Sadr, who has 40 seats in this your coalition of 70. And he's dead against al-Maliki being a prime minister again for obvious reasons. We know exactly the military confrontation they had in Basra and Amara and Baghdad. And Muqtada Sadr is not going...
It's not just Muqtada Sadr. Not just Muqtada Sadr. Even the Ammar al-Hakim and his group, they prefer to have Adil Abd al-Mahdi or Ibrahim al-Ja'fari Ridha al-Maliki. So they found an excuse by Muqtada Sadr. All of them, they would not vote for al-Maliki at all. This is a fact. I'm inside Iraq. I know this story.
The ace you are holding, Sharif Ali ibn al-Hussein, is not going to win.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with anything that he said. I think Mr. al-Maliki has huge obstacles in front of him for him to remain as prime minister. He's burnt a lot of bridges. He's lost confidence. People don't trust him, both inside Iraq and outside Iraq. But the fact is that nobody has put up an alternative candidate to him within the National Alliance. And therefore, it is not unexpected that he will continue to hold on until another candidate emerges. I think that is the second stage of the process towards forming the government, is that if another candidate, a consensus candidate, emerges within the National Alliance, that has the confidence of the Kurdish group and al-Iraqi, I think that that will go a long way, and I suspect that the Prime Minister will eventually pull out of the race, and then the question will, once it will be put towards al-Iraqi, do you want to join the government in a national partnership, or are you insisting on trying to form the government by yourselves?
What I'm saying, I think there is no chance for al-Maliki with the National Alliance, no way. They don't like him to be the Prime Minister, this is one. There is a chance for al-Maliki to be the President of Iraq if he is with us, really. And this is the only chance for him. It works, and if we go together, we will have very relaxing majority in the parliament. It's about 180. And then we are really, together we can work Iraq in a better way. The other two groups, they can be an opposition. This is the political, what you call it, and the democratic process. If we want to build it, it is a matter of to have an opposition and a government. A relaxing majority government could be between Ayad Allawi and al-Maliki. Al-Maliki can be a president, Ayad Allawi will be the prime minister, and we will have in the parliament a very relaxing majority.
Let me expand the discussion just a little bit, Sharif Ali ibn al-Hussein, taking a sentence from what you said, and that is there is a great opposition within and without for al-Maliki. Let us take the without, and let us talk about the elephant in the room, and that is al-Maliki has rubbed the Syrians the wrong way, and they are absolutely against his premiership a second time. That is in the minus side, but in the plus side, he is the darling of the Iranians. So perhaps, let me just run this scenario by you. The Iranians, they don't like to antagonize the Syrians. They are their geopolitical alliance in the region. So most likely they will relent and they will succumb to the objection of the Syrians against al-Maliki. Without the regional powers, can somebody become a prime minister? And that is the oddity of the situation in Iraq after 2003.
Well, I think a lot of people actually have got it the wrong way around. What we have is two major blocks in Iraq. One that regards Iran as a destabilizing threat in the region and a negative force in Iraq, and they tend to ally themselves with Arab countries and with the United States. The other bloc in Iraq regards Iran as a Muslim neighbor that we've always been neighbors and always will be, and it is within our interest to have the best possible relationships. Therefore, these two blocs will gain the sympathy of Iran and the United States. I don't think they're puppeteers. I don't think they can force decisions on the Iraqi politicians. But I think it's a differing worldview. That is why it would be extremely unlikely that the state of law under the leadership of Nouri Maliki or anybody else will jump ship and join with the bloc that regards that Iran is part of the axis of evil.
Mustafa, without Iran, can Iyad Allawi become a prime minister?
No, I mean, there is what you call it, if you put an equation, to be the right equation, a political equation, the triangle of Riyadh, Ankara, Tehran, it should be balanced. Otherwise, with the United States, otherwise, any government will have a fate like the previous government. It will not be stabilized. I don't think there is a real Iraqi decision. It is influenced by what you call the United Nations, the United States, and as I said, the neighboring country. Don't have a pinkish dream. Unless they accept this equation, nobody can work in Iraq. For al-Maliki and Allawi, I think if al-Maliki become what you call it a president, and Allawi is the Prime Minister of Iraq, then you can, for the equation, it could be stabilized. Both sides will be accepted. The American will be happy as well, because you know.
But there is a problem, Mustafa Al-Hiti, before you continue, and that problem
Neither
is...
he is against the Iranian.
The problem is, Mustafa Al-Hiti, is exactly what the Kurds are going to get out of this. Sharif Ali ibn Hussein, the Kurds, they have emerged in the last election as well as in this election as the kingmakers. They have a very specific set of demands and goals they want to achieve. One of them is, you know, the presidency should be, at least for this term, be given to Jalal Talbani. Second is the disputed areas. Primarily, they want Kirkuk. And they are willing to side with anybody and give support to anybody as long as somebody promises them Kirkuk. And Kirkuk is bigger than Ayad Allawi, is bigger than Al-Maliki, is bigger than anybody. If anybody messes with Kirkuk, the whole area is going to explode.
I'll answer that in 2 points. Firstly, with regard to the tempting Prime Minister Maliki to become president, I mean, I think if the National Alliance were faced with that, and Al-Itilaf al-Watani, or the Iraqi coalition was facing the opposition, I think going into opposition, they would simply agree to Maliki remaining prime minister. This American tactic or strategy of placing Maliki as prime minister and Ayad Allawi as prime minister is just not possible. I don't know where the Americans get these ideas from. We just accept if that was forced on us, we'd just tell Maliki stay prime minister and don't bring in Ayad Allawi. And with regard to the Kurds, I think the National Alliance is much closer to the Kurds than Iraqi ever could be.
Does that mean you're going to give them Kirkuk?
A substantial part of Iraqi got voted on the basis that they are opponents of the Kurds.
You never answered my question, Sharif Ali Hussein. Does that mean you're going to give them Kirkuk?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there because it's a complicated issue. What I mean is that Iraqi will find it very difficult to reach any agreement with Kurds because they'll have to betray their voters. We in the National Alliance don't regard it as giving them Kirkuk. What it is implementing the Constitution. There is section 140 of the Constitution.
But that didn't happen during the Maliki's tenure, so why should it happen now? Absolutely. And I think within the next few weeks, this will be thrashed out and a formula will be agreed on what to do about Kirkuk, or at least a process of what to do about Kirkuk. The National Alliance is in a much better position. Let me get a response from Mustafa Al-Hiti. Go ahead, Mustafa Al-Hiti.
Well, I'm saying, really, the courts, they are waiting from the different groups or the blocs to give them the big share of the cake. As I said, the very relaxing majority in the parliament, which is about 180, is between us and the state of law. And this is accepted as well by the American and the region, because the neighboring country, as I said, Al-Maliki is not really a pro-Iranian. And if he is, he should, from the very beginning, before the election, could combine together, make alliance with the Itilaf al-Watani. He didn't. He is still saying no for this election. So the American, they have what you call it, the worst, what you call a choice with Al-Maliki and with Allawi. And in this case, we don't want a very Islamic government in Iraq. So it's going to be very moderate. I cannot say secular government, but it's going to be really still pro, what you call it, modernized country, rather to go in the other group. For the Kurds, again, I am saying they have their own parliament and they have their own government in the north of Iraq. It is not a federal, it is a confederal state.
Yes.
So in this case, they can stay in the parliament, in the Iraqi parliament, and they can be an opposition together with the, you call it, Al-Itilaf al-Watani, and you can run the government quite happy and safely.
In the last minute or two left to me, Sharif Ali ibn al-Hussein, explain to me, as well as the audience of Inside Iraq and Al Jazeera, why would the next government be a national government, a partnership government, rather than what it is now, which is a sectarian-based government?
Well, I mean, we in the National Alliance could easily form the government. I mean, we have 159 MPs. We need 4 more to form the government, and that would be quite easy to get partners from the smaller coalitions and form the government. We could elect the president, choose the prime minister and the speaker of the house without reference to anybody else in parliament. And it would be a smooth and efficient process, and we could govern the country without anybody else. But the fact of the matter is, we believe that at the moment it is not in national interest to go down that route, that the government should be inclusive, that even though we could bring in, we have Kurds and Turkomans and Christians and Shias and Sunnis, we believe that for the efficient running of the government, for political peace in the country, that we should include the other groups, blocks in parliament. Al-Iraqi and the Kurdish alliance should be included in any future government.
Yes.
And it's up to those groups whether they want to join us at the table or not. We can form the government without them, but we're not going to. We want them to participate in a government of national partnership.
Let me ask the last question to Mustafa Al-Hiti. Mustafa Al-Hiti, the last 4 years, the Iraqi citizen, the Iraqi street did not see any benefit from this government. Corruption is rife, services are absolutely non-existent, electricity is, people keep promising electricity and there is no electricity. So why would the new government suddenly becomes nationalistic and becomes service-oriented and is going to do the miracles for Iraqis? Now that the parliament is 80% new, all the bad apples have been thrown out, will the new apples are going to make any difference?
I doubt if there is really to start a government with what you call it, a plan of action to be accepted by. I think there must be two blocks, the two major blocks. Otherwise, if you want to share the others together, then the corruption will be increased and there will not be any kind of supervision about the government. Sharif Ali is very optimistic, thinking that the National Alliance is 150. It is not, it is a fragile, it is not a solid one. And if it is a solid, they will know the state of law, they will not accept the negotiation with the Iraqi and leaving their friends away from the, what you call it, from being together with us in the negotiation. They try to make this, what we call it, fancy as a fact. It will not.
Yes.
And I promise you that Iraqi and state of law, they will be together and they will form the election majority in the parliament. They try, really,
yes.
the Itilaf al-Watani, they will not succeed. Until today, they cannot, even now, they couldn't formulate what you call it, a committee to choose the prime minister. So they will not choose.
Mustafa Al-Hiti, Sharif Ali ibn al-Hussein, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq. To watch the show online, please visit our website, aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of the show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, this is Jassim Azzawi wishing you a great week.